What if I told you that sometimes the most terrifying stories are not found in books or horror movies, but in real life? What if I told you there was a hotel right in the heart of Los Angeles where so much tragedy has unfolded that some people believe it is cursed? And what if I told you that one day, in 2013, a young woman checked into that hotel and vanished in the strangest, most disturbing way imaginable? Her name was Elisa Lam. And her story is not only haunting, it's one of the most mysterious, unsolved cases of the 21st century. Welcome back to The Silent Witness. Tonight, we begin our deep dive into the chilling case of Elisa Lam and the dark history of the Cecil Hotel. This will not be an ordinary story. It's a journey into unanswered questions, into shadows that still linger, and into a mystery that refuses to rest. If you believe stories like this deserve to be told, if you believe every victim deserves to be remembered, then I invite you to subscribe, join our community, and hit that notification bell. Because together, we give a voice to those who can no longer speak. Who was Elisa Lam? Before we talk about her death, let's talk about her life. Elisa Lam was born in Vancouver, Canada in 1991. She was the daughter of immigrants from Hong Kong, and she grew up helping her family run a restaurant. Friends and family described her as a kind, intelligent, curious young woman. She loved reading, writing, and traveling. Like many young people of her generation, she used social media to express herself. She had a Tumblr blog called Nouvelle Nouveau, where she wrote about her thoughts, her struggles, and her dreams. But Elisa also lived with something many never knew the full extent of. She suffered from bipolar disorder and depression. These challenges shaped parts of her journey and would later play a central role in the theories about her death. Still, Elisa didn't let this stop her. She wanted to explore the world, find herself, and document her adventures. In January 2013, at just 21 years old, she embarked on a solo trip down the west coast of the United States. San Diego, Los Angeles, her plan was to see new cities, meet new people, and experience life. And in Los Angeles, she chose to stay at a hotel called the Cecil. The Cecil Hotel, first impressions. To an outsider, the Cecil Hotel might have seemed like a budget-friendly choice. It was centrally located downtown, close to attractions, but the reality was very different. The Cecil Hotel wasn't glamorous. It wasn't even safe. For decades, it had been home to crime, poverty, and violence. Locals knew its reputation, but Elisa, visiting from out of town, may not have realized just how notorious it was. On January 26, 2013, Elisa checked into the hotel. At first, she shared a room with other travelers, like a hostel, but within days, she was moved to a private room. Reports suggest her roommates complained about her odd behavior. What exactly was happening with Elisa in those first days inside the Cecil? We may never fully know. The disappearance. On January 31st, Elisa was supposed to check out of the Cecil Hotel. She had plans to head to Santa Cruz next, but she never did. Her parents, worried after not hearing from her, contacted the Los Angeles Police Department. Soon, missing person posters with Elisa's face spread across the city. Police began searching the hotel. They checked her room, the hallways, common areas, but Elisa was nowhere to be found. It was as if she had simply vanished. But the hotel had something the world would soon see: security cameras. On February 14, 2013, Los Angeles police released a piece of footage to the public. It was a short, grainy clip from one of the Cecil's elevators. What it showed was Elisa Lam. She steps inside the elevator and presses several buttons. The doors don't close. She steps to the side, peeking out into the hallway. She looks nervous, as if she's being followed. She hides in the corner, then quickly steps out again. She moves her arms in strange, sweeping motions. Some described it as if she were talking to someone invisible. Others said it looked like she was fighting off something we couldn't see. At one point, she steps outside the elevator completely, moving erratically, almost like she's lost control of her body. Then, she vanishes. The elevator doors finally close. This was the last known footage of Elisa Lam alive, and it terrified the world. Within hours, the video went viral. Millions of people watched it online, analyzing every frame. What was Elisa doing? Was she scared? Was she hallucinating? Was someone following her? Or was something else happening in that hallway? Theories exploded. Theories about the elevator video. Some said Elisa was clearly experiencing a mental health episode. With her history of bipolar disorder, it was possible she was having a psychotic break. Others weren't convinced. They noticed that the elevator doors stayed open far longer than they should have. Was the footage tampered with? Was someone else just out of frame? Then came the supernatural theories. Many believed Elisa was interacting with something invisible, perhaps a ghost or even a malevolent presence. Whatever the truth, the video only deepened the mystery. Because shortly after that footage was captured, Elisa was gone. The discovery. For nearly 3 weeks, police searched the hotel. They brought in dogs. They checked rooms, stairwells, even the roof. But still, no sign of Elisa. Then guests at the Cecil began to complain. The water in the hotel was discolored. It tasted strange. The pressure was low. Maintenance workers went to check the rooftop water tanks, and what they found was horrific. Inside one of the massive tanks was Elisa Lam's body. She was naked. Her clothes and belongings were at the bottom, and she had been there for weeks. The question was no longer, where was Elisa Lam? The question was, how did she get there? The autopsy. When the coroner's report was released, the mystery only grew. There were no signs of trauma, no evidence of drugs or alcohol, no indications of foul play. The cause of death, accidental drowning. But that explanation didn't make sense to many. How could Elisa have accessed the roof, which was locked and alarmed? How could she have climbed into the water tank alone, closed the heavy lid behind her, and drowned without leaving evidence of a struggle? Nothing added up. Theories of Elisa's death. Theory 1, mental illness. Some believe Elisa's bipolar disorder caused her to act irrationally, climb into the tank, and drown by accident. But this theory doesn't explain how she bypassed the rooftop security measures. Theory 2, foul play. Others believe someone else was involved, perhaps a staff member or a guest who had access to the roof. But if there was foul play, why was there no evidence of assault? Theory 3, the supernatural. And then there are those who believe the Cecil Hotel itself played a role. With its dark history of suicides, murders, and infamous residents, some claim Elisa was just the latest victim of a curse that has haunted the building for decades. Unanswered questions. Why did the elevator doors behave strangely in the video? Why was Elisa's behavior so unsettling, so unnatural? And why did it take so long for investigators to find her body when the water tanks were an obvious place to check? These are questions that even today remain unanswered. Emotional reflection. At the heart of this story is a young woman. Elisa Lam was more than just a mystery. She was a daughter, a friend, a dreamer who wanted to see the world. Her life was cut short in a way that shocked millions, but we must remember her not just as a victim, but as a person whose story deserves to be told with compassion and care. I want to hear from you. What do you think happened to Elisa Lam? Was it an accident, foul play, or something far darker? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice matters, because in mysteries like these, every perspective helps us get closer to the truth. And if you believe these stories should never be forgotten, subscribe to The Silent Witness and share this video. Together, we keep the memories alive, and we seek the answers the world still doesn't have. Because Elisa's case is not just about her, it's also about the hotel where she died, the Cecil Hotel. A building with a history so dark, so cursed, that Elisa was far from its first victim. We'll explore the hotel's disturbing past, the suicides, the murders, and the killers who once lived there. And we'll ask, was Elisa Lam's death just part of a much bigger story? This is The Silent Witness, and this story has only just begun. Was it an accident? Was someone else involved? Or was Elisa Lam the latest victim of something much darker? Something tied to the hotel itself? Because the Cecil Hotel has a past filled with tragedy, crime, and death. And tonight, we're going to uncover it. The birth of the Cecil Hotel. The story of the Cecil Hotel begins nearly a century before Elisa's death. In 1924, the hotel was built as a grand destination for travelers. Designed with marble lobbies, stained glass windows, and 700 rooms, the Cecil was meant to represent the prosperity of Los Angeles in the 1920s. But almost immediately, things went wrong. The Great Depression struck in 1929, Instead of attracting wealthy tourists, the Cecil became a cheap place for transients and long-term residents. Over time, the area around it declined too. Skid Row, an infamous stretch of Los Angeles known for poverty, drugs, and crime, grew right outside its doors. The Cecil was no longer a hotel of glamour, it was a hotel of desperation, and soon it became a hotel of death. The suicides. Starting in the 1930s, the Cecil gained a reputation as a place where people came to end their lives. One of the earliest recorded suicides was in 1931, when a man named W.K. Norton ingested poison in his room. Others followed, jumping from windows, overdosing, or using the Cecil as their final destination. By the 1950s and 60s, the pattern was undeniable. The Cecil was no longer just another building in downtown LA. It was a place where tragedy lived. Locals began to call it the Suicide Hotel. Think about that. A building so marked by despair became infamous for death itself. And this was only the beginning. Violent deaths. The suicides were tragic enough, but the Cecil also witnessed violent deaths. In 1964, a woman named Pigeon Goldie Osgood, a retired telephone operator, was found raped, stabbed, and strangled in her room. Her murder was never solved. Other guests were beaten to death, poisoned, or discovered in mysterious circumstances. The Cecil seemed to attract not just victims, but predators. In the 1980s, one of the most notorious predators in history moved in. Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker. Richard Ramirez, better known as the Night Stalker, was one of America's most feared serial killers. In the mid-1980s, Ramirez carried out a string of brutal murders across California. His victims ranged in age from young children to elderly adults. He killed indiscriminately, often leaving behind symbols of satanic worship. During this reign of terror, Ramirez lived at the Cecil Hotel. He reportedly stayed on the 14th floor. After committing murders, he would return to the hotel, his clothes covered in blood. He would strip them off in the back alley, then walk calmly through the lobby, unnoticed by staff and residents, many of whom were too used to chaos to pay attention. Think about that. The Night Stalker, a man who terrified millions, was walking the halls of the Cecil. His presence stained the hotel's reputation even further. Jack Unterweger, the copycat killer. But Ramirez wasn't the only serial killer tied to the Cecil. In the early 1990s, Austrian journalist Jack Unterweger checked into the hotel. On the surface, Unterweger seemed like a reformed man. He had been convicted of murder years earlier in Austria, but was released after convincing authorities he was rehabilitated. He even worked as a writer, covering crime stories. But in reality, Unterweger was killing again. While living at the Cecil, he murdered several women in Los Angeles, strangling them with their own bras. Two serial killers, decades apart, both called the Cecil Hotel home. Coincidence? Or a sign that the building itself drew darkness to it? The Black Dahlia Connection. The Cecil's reputation for death stretches even further back. In 1947, a young woman named Elizabeth Short, better known as the Black Dahlia, was reportedly seen drinking at the Cecil's bar just days before her brutal murder. Her body, cut in half and mutilated, was discovered in a vacant lot in Los Angeles. The case remains one of the city's most infamous unsolved murders. Though no direct link between the Cecil and her death was proven, the connection only deepened the building's dark legend, a magnet for tragedy. By the time Elisa Lam arrived in 2013, the Cecil had nearly 90 years of tragedy behind it. Hundreds of deaths, suicides, murders, accidents, two of the world's most notorious serial killers, a possible connection to the Black Dahlia. The building was so infamous that locals believed it was cursed. Some even said the hotel itself was alive, feeding off the despair of its guests. And when Elisa checked in, she may have had no idea of the hotel's history, or maybe she felt it. Elisa Lam meets the Cecil Pismo. Now let's return to Elisa. She arrived in Los Angeles full of excitement, wanting to explore the city. She stayed at the Cecil because it was cheap, close to downtown. But very quickly, her stay began to unravel. Her roommates reported strange behavior. Elisa was moved to a private room. She was last seen in the lobby, making small talk with staff. And then, the infamous elevator footage. Some believe that footage wasn't just showing Elisa's struggle with mental illness or a stalker. They believe it was showing her encounter with the Cecil itself, A building with decades of death. A building where killers roamed. A building where souls lingered. Was the hotel cursed? Let's step back for a moment. Why did so much tragedy happen in one place? Was it just location? Was it poverty? Bad luck? Or was it something else? Many believe the Cecil Hotel carries an energy, something dark, something that feeds on despair. The suicides, the murders, the killers who chose to live there, all of it paints a picture of a place not just haunted by its past, but shaped by it. So when Elisa Lam checked in, some say she didn't just stay in a hotel. She stepped into a trap. What do you think? Was the Cecil Hotel cursed? Was Elisa Lam's death just another tragedy in a long line of tragedies? Or was there something more sinister at play? I want to hear your theories in the comments below. And if you believe these stories matter, if you believe every victim's story deserves to be told, subscribe to The Silent Witness. Share this video with friends, because together we shine a light on the darkness the world tries to forget. To be continued. Because Elisa's death wasn't just about her, or even the Cecil's past. It was about what came next. The investigations, the conspiracy theories, the worldwide obsession, and the lingering questions that still haunt us today. Hotel's dark history. Explore the investigation into Elisa Lam's death, contradictions in the autopsy, and unanswered questions. Cover the viral internet theories, murder, cover-ups, supernatural, TB outbreak, dark water connections, etc. Reflect on Elisa Lam's humanity and legacy. Chilling case of Elisa Lam, unanswered questions and theories that still haunt us. Opening recap. In our first episode, we traced the mysterious disappearance of Elisa Lam, from her final days at the Cecil Hotel to the shocking discovery of her body in a rooftop water tank. In our second episode, we explored the dark and violent history of the Cecil itself, a hotel so infamous for death and despair that some say it is cursed. And now, in our final deep dive, we turn to the investigation. Because while the police closed the case with an explanation, the world was not satisfied. There are too many contradictions, too many unanswered questions, too many strange coincidences for this story to simply fade into the past. So tonight, we examine the evidence, the theories, and the chilling possibility that the truth of what happened to Elisa Lam will never truly be known. The investigation. After Elisa's body was discovered, the Los Angeles Police Department faced mounting pressure. The world was watching. The coroner released their official conclusion: accidental drowning. Elisa, they said, likely climbed into the tank herself during a bipolar episode and drowned. Case closed. But if you've been following this story, you know nothing about it feels closed. For one, how did Elisa get onto the roof in the first place? The hotel's rooftop doors were locked and alarmed. Only staff had access. If she triggered an alarm, wouldn't someone have noticed? Second, how did she climb into the tank? Each water tank was about 8 feet tall, sitting on a platform. To reach the opening, she would have needed to climb a ladder, then lift a heavy metal hatch. Could Elisa, alone and in a disoriented state, really have done all that? And third, why did it take weeks for her to be found? When the roof and tanks were supposedly searched early on, the answers remained vague, and every vague answer fueled more suspicion. Autopsy, contradictions. When the autopsy was released, many expected it to clear up the confusion, but instead, it made things worse. The toxicology report showed Elisa had prescription medication in her system, consistent with her bipolar treatment, but the levels suggested she might not have been taking them consistently. There were no illegal drugs, no alcohol, and no signs of assault. But here's where it gets strange. Some reports claimed her body showed signs of bloating and decomposition, consistent with water exposure. Others pointed to missing evidence, like the lack of a rape kit or incomplete toxicology. The autopsy report was even labeled incomplete in places, leaving gaps that conspiracy theorists quickly jumped on. For many, the official conclusion of accidental drowning felt more like an easy way out than the truth. Hatch theories that refuse to die. Let's break down the main theories one by one. Theory 1. Mental illness and accident. The simplest theory is also the official one. Elisa, struggling with her bipolar disorder, experienced a psychotic break. In a disoriented state, she accessed the roof, climbed into the tank, and drowned. Supporters of this theory point to her Tumblr blog, where she often wrote openly about her struggles with mental health. They argue her strange behavior in the elevator video was consistent with someone experiencing hallucinations or paranoia. But critics push back. Why was the rooftop alarm not triggered? How did she close the heavy lid of the tank after entering? And why would she even go there in the first place? Theory 2. Foul play. Many believe Elisa did not die alone. The elevator footage seems to show her interacting with someone, perhaps hiding, perhaps being stalked. The way she peeks outside, steps back, waves her arms, it feels like she's reacting to another presence. Could someone have followed her to the roof? A hotel staff member? Another guest? This theory argues she was either forced into the tank or killed elsewhere, with her body placed inside. The lack of security footage outside the elevator only fuels this suspicion. Was footage deleted? Was the hotel covering something up? Theory 3. Supernatural influence. Given the Cecil's history, many people turn to the paranormal for answers. Theories suggest Elisa may have been influenced or even attacked by a spirit or dark presence inside the hotel. Her bizarre hand movements in the elevator have been described as ritualistic, almost like she was pushing something away. Some believe the Cecil's decades of tragedy left behind an energy that claimed Elisa as its latest victim. Is this far-fetched? Perhaps, but for those who believe in curses, the Cecil is Exhibit A. Theory 4. Government cover-up and the TB connection. One of the strangest theories links Elisa's death to a tuberculosis outbreak that happened in downtown Los Angeles shortly after her body was found. The test used to detect TB, it was called the Lam Elisa test. Yes, you heard that correctly. Lam Elisa. Elisa Lam. Coincidence or something darker? Conspiracy theorists claim Elisa may have been used in a secret experiment, or that her death was connected to medical research gone wrong. There's no hard evidence for this, but the bizarre coincidence continues to fascinate theorists online. Theory 5. The dark water connection. Another eerie coincidence lies in pop culture. Years before Elisa's death, a Japanese horror film called Dark Water featured a nearly identical storyline. A young girl drowns in a water tank on the roof of an apartment building. The residents complain of black water coming from their taps. The similarities are unsettling. Elisa's death mirrored a fictional horror story almost perfectly. Was it coincidence? Life imitating art? Or something more sinister? The internet obsession. After the elevator footage was released, Elisa's case became one of the first true crime mysteries to go massively viral online. Millions of people across Reddit, YouTube, and blogs dissected every frame, every piece of evidence. Armchair detectives built elaborate theories. Documentaries were made. Netflix produced a series. Some of this attention helped keep the case alive, but some of it also spiraled into dangerous territory, accusing innocent people, spreading false information, and turning Elisa into more of a myth than a person. And that brings us to something important. Remembering Elisa. Amid all the theories, the conspiracies, the mysteries, we cannot forget that Elisa Lam was a real person. She was 21 years old. She loved books. She dreamed of traveling the world. She had a family who loved her deeply. Her Tumblr blog, still online, offers glimpses into her mind, her humor, her creativity, her struggles. In one post, she wrote, "You're always haunted by the idea you're wasting your life." Elisa was searching for meaning, for connection, for adventure. And instead, her life ended in one of the most chilling mysteries of our time. Her story deserves not just fascination, but compassion. Why this case still haunts us. So why does the case of Elisa Lam stay with us? Because it sits at the intersection of tragedy, mystery, and horror. Because the footage of her last moments feels so raw, so human, and yet so unexplainable. Because the Cecil Hotel itself is more than just a setting. It's a character in the story, a silent witness to decades of despair. And because even now, no explanation fully satisfies. Was Elisa Lam's death a tragic accident? Was it foul play? Or was it something we may never understand? Viewers, I want to hear your thoughts. Which theory do you believe? Accident, murder, supernatural? Or do you think this case will remain unsolved forever? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you believe in giving victims like Elisa Lam a voice, subscribe to The Silent Witness. Share this video so her story continues to be told. Because only by remembering can we honor her life and seek the truth. The Cecil Hotel has since been rebranded, renamed, and closed for renovations. But no matter how much paint you put on its walls, its past cannot be erased. And Elisa Lam's case, her mystery, will always be tied to it. The truth may never come, but one thing is certain: the story of Elisa Lam will continue to haunt, to inspire, and to remind us of the fragile line between reality and the unknown. This is The Silent Witness. And while this episode ends here, the shadows of this story remain, to be continued.